Picture a human brain doing something that looks impossible. It chooses the thing that destroys it on purpose. Not once. Not as a mistake, but repeatedly. Despite consequences, despite promises, despite fear, despite love, despite the very real knowledge that this time could be the time you lose everything. And if you've never experienced addiction up close, it's easy to think the explanation is simple. Just stop. They don't want it badly enough. They're weak. But addiction isn't mostly a story about weakness. It's a story about learning, a story about memory, a story about pain. And, this is the disturbing part, a story about how the brain can be trained to treat a substance, a behavior, or a hit of relief as if it's more important than food, more important than safety, sometimes more important than survival. Tonight, we're going to take a slow, honest look at the psychology behind addiction. What it is, what it does to the mind, and why it can feel like your own brain has turned into a persuasive enemy that knows exactly how to break you.
Let's start with a definition that won't insult your intelligence. Addiction isn't just using a lot. It isn't just liking something. It isn't even necessarily getting high. Addiction is when a behavior becomes compulsive, when it continues despite harm, and when your ability to choose freely gets squeezed by forces you don't fully control. Clinically, you'll see this described as things like impaired control, cravings, continued use despite negative consequences, tolerance and withdrawal, and a narrowing of life around the behavior. But psychology adds something important. Addiction is not one thing. It's a pattern that can attach itself to different substances and behaviors because it hijacks systems. Your brain evolved to keep you alive. That's why addiction can be alcohol, or opioids, or gambling, or nicotine, or scrolling, or porn, or stimulant medication taken outside medical guidance, or work, or spending. Not all of these are identical, and not all have the same withdrawal risks, but many of them pull on the same core machinery: reward learning, stress regulation, habit formation, and emotional pain relief.
And here's the first unsettling idea. Addiction isn't the presence of pleasure. It's often the absence of peace. If addiction were just willpower, then information would cure it. If addiction were just morality, then shame would fix it. But the data is brutal. Shame predicts relapse. Isolation predicts escalation. Stress predicts cravings. And just stop is often the one sentence that ensures the person stops trying to seek help at all. So what's actually happening? To answer that, you need to understand a very uncomfortable truth about the brain. Your brain does not exist to make you happy. It exists to keep you alive. And to do that, it ranks priorities. It decides what matters. It decides what to chase. It decides what to fear. It decides what to repeat. Addiction is what happens when that ranking system becomes corrupted, when relief, reward, and survival signaling get rewired around a specific target. You've heard dopamine described as the pleasure chemical. That description is not exactly wrong, but it's misleading in a way that matters. Dopamine is less about pleasure and more about pursuit. Less, I like this. More, this matters. Pay attention, go get it again. In neuroscience terms, dopamine is heavily involved in motivation learning from reward prediction, assigning salience, importance to cues energizing behavior. One of the most famous discoveries here is reward prediction error. Dopamine spikes not just when you get a reward, but when you get an unexpected reward, or when a cue predicts a reward. Your brain is basically running a constant internal program. Was that better than expected? If yes, reinforce the behavior. If no, weaken it. If uncertain, pay attention. This is an efficient survival algorithm. It helped your ancestors learn which berries didn't kill them and which paths led to food. But drugs, and many modern addictive behaviors, don't just trigger this system. They overclock it. They create learning signals stronger than the brain evolved to handle. And once the brain learns, this is important, the rest of your mind starts reorganizing around that conclusion, whether you agree with it or not. Here's where addiction starts to look like a horror story written in neurotransmitters. Researchers have described a split between liking and wanting. Liking is the actual pleasure. Wanting is the craving, the pull, the magnetism. In addiction, wanting can increase even as liking decreases, meaning you can crave the thing even when it barely feels good anymore. This is part of what makes addiction feel possessed. People will tell you, "I didn't even enjoy it. I hated it. I don't know why I did it." But the brain has learned something that doesn't require enjoyment to keep running. Relief is a reward. Ritual is a reward. Ending a craving is a reward. And the brain can chase ending the craving like it's the prize, even if the substance or behavior itself is now disappointing, numbing, or miserable. This is why addiction isn't just chasing pleasure. It's often chasing normal. Psychologically, addiction often runs like a loop. Not always in the same order, not always clean, but the same ingredients show up. 1. Cue. A place, time, emotion, person, song, smell, notification, payday. 2. Craving. Intrusive thoughts, bodily tension. I need it, urgency. 3. Ritual. Preparation behaviors that already start reducing anxiety. 4. Reward or relief. The hit, the numbness, the escape, the rush. 5. Crash. Shame, depletion, withdrawal, consequences. 6. Cue sensitivity increases because the brain learned again. Disturbing fact, the ritual itself becomes reinforcing. Even before the substance or behavior happens, dopamine can rise in anticipation. The mind starts narrowing, attention collapses onto a single goal. Everything else, work, relationships, future plans, becomes background noise. That narrowing is not a metaphor, it's measurable. Cognitive resources get hijacked. Addiction is, in part, an attention disorder, manufactured by learning. Your brain is a prediction machine. If using happened after stress 50 times, stress becomes a trigger. If using happened on Fridays, Friday becomes a trigger. If using happened with a certain friend, that friend's voice becomes a trigger. If using happened in your car, the driver's seat becomes a trigger. This is classical conditioning, Pavlov's dog, but with a terrifying upgrade. The bell can be an emotion. A person can become addicted not only to the drug, but to the state change, the shift from one internal world to another. And the more the brain learns these associations, the more the world becomes filled with hidden tripwires. Which leads to one of the cruelest parts of addiction recovery. You can quit the drug and still feel ambushed by a grocery store aisle. Because your memory systems don't just store facts, they store maps of survival. Next, when habits move control out of consciousness, the prefrontal cortex versus the basal ganglia. Early on, addictive behavior can be impulsive. I want it. Later, it often becomes habitual. I do it. Habits live heavily in circuits involving the basal ganglia, systems designed to automate repeated sequences so you don't have to think about them. That's normally good. You don't want to consciously calculate how to tie your shoes every morning. But addiction can turn self-destruction into something your brain executes like muscle memory. A person can find themselves halfway through the behavior before they fully decide. Driving to the dealer, opening the app, walking into the bar, calling the number, and then comes the panic. Why am I here? Because the decision wasn't made where you think decisions are made. The brain outsourced it. This is why willpower collapses when you're tired, stressed, hungry, lonely, or sleep-deprived. Those states weaken executive control and habits take over. Addiction loves exhaustion. The prefrontal cortex helps you do things like delay gratification. Imagine the future, inhibit impulses, consider consequences, choose values over urges. In addiction, that system gets compromised in multiple ways. Acute intoxication impairs judgment. Withdrawal and chronic stress reduce cognitive flexibility. Sleep disruption amplifies impulsivity. Craving consumes working memory, your mental RAM. Learned cues pull attention away from long-term goals. This is why an addicted person can sound completely rational at 10 a.m. and completely different at 10 p.m. Not because they're lying, because different neural states are running the show. The disturbing psychology is that addiction can create internal regimes, a sober self and a craving self, each with different priorities, different narratives, different memories of pain. Early in substance use, the brain experiences a strong positive effect. Euphoria, confidence, calm, energy, comfort. But the brain is built to maintain balance, homeostasis, so it pushes back. If a drug pushes you up, the brain pulls you down. If a behavior floods you with stimulation, the brain dulls sensitivity. Over time, the baseline changes. Some researchers call this allostasis, a new, worse normal. So now the cycle shifts. You're not using to feel amazing. You're using to stop feeling awful. This is negative reinforcement. The behavior removes pain, anxiety, agitation, emptiness, or withdrawal. And that removal becomes the reward. Which is why addiction is often invisible from the outside. The high may not look dramatic, but the relief is everything. And that leads to a dark paradox. The thing causing the pain becomes the thing that temporarily cures it. Not everyone with trauma develops addiction, and not everyone with addiction has obvious trauma. But trauma and chronic stress dramatically increase risk. Why? Because addiction doesn't only offer pleasure, it offers control, or at least the illusion of it. If your internal world feels unsafe, if you live with hypervigilance, intrusive memories, panic, numbness, or relentless shame, then a substance or behavior that changes your state can feel like oxygen. Psychologically, substances and compulsive behaviors can function like tools for emotional regulation, dissociation, social confidence, sleep, numbing grief, quieting self-hatred, reducing physical pain, escaping boredom and emptiness. This is why the phrase, "Why don't they just stop?" can be naive. Because to the addicted brain, stopping can feel like removing the only working painkiller it has. If you want to understand addiction, you have to ask a different question, not what's wrong with them, but what happened to them, and what does this behavior solve? Humans are social mammals. Our nervous systems regulate each other. Connection lowers stress hormones. Belonging changes pain perception. Being seen, truly seen, changes behavior. Isolation, on the other hand, is not neutral. It's a stressor, and addiction often thrives in exactly the conditions that make connection hard. Shame, secrecy, mistrust, fear of judgment. You use to cope. You feel shame. Shame makes you hide. Hiding makes you lonely. Loneliness increases stress. Stress increases cravings. Cravings lead back to using. The behavior becomes your relationship. The ritual becomes your reliable companion. And if you've never felt that kind of shame, it's hard to describe how persuasive it becomes. Shame doesn't say, "You did something bad." It says, "You are bad." And when you believe you are bad, self-destruction stops feeling like a tragedy and starts feeling like a confirmation. A key psychological feature of addiction is delay discounting, the tendency to choose smaller immediate rewards over larger future rewards. This isn't unique to addiction, but addiction amplifies it. When you're craving, the future becomes abstract. Consequences feel distant and unreal compared to the immediate promise of relief. The brain does this naturally under threat. If you were starving, you'd prioritize food now over retirement in 30 years. Addiction tricks the brain into feeling like it's starving, so it makes choices that are rational in a distorted internal economy. It's not that the person can't understand consequences. It's that their nervous system is treating consequences as less important than surviving the next 10 minutes. The human mind hates cognitive dissonance, the tension between "I value health" and "I'm doing harm." So the brain reduces that tension by generating stories. Addiction doesn't just create cravings, it creates reasons. "I'll quit tomorrow, I deserve this. It's been a hard week. I'm more fun like this. This is the last time. It's not as bad as other people. No one cares anyway. I can't sleep without it. I need it to function." Some of these are partially true, Many are emotional logic, logic that exists to protect the behavior. Disturbingly, the brain can produce these rationalizations before conscious awareness catches up, because the goal is not truth, the goal is permission. Now we need to talk about something uncomfortable. Addiction is not only personal, it's also profitable. Many modern addictive behaviors, especially digital ones, are supercharged by schedules of reinforcement that psychologists have known about for decades. One of the strongest is variable ratio reinforcement, rewards that arrive unpredictably. Social media feeds, notification systems, loot boxes, endless scrolling, autoplay, intermittent likes, variable social validation, surprise content. Your brain treats uncertainty like a reason to pay attention. Maybe the next swipe is the good one. Maybe the next video is the one. Maybe the next message fixes my mood. And here's the disturbing part. This isn't accidental. Entire industries test colors, timing, sounds, frictionless payment systems, and reward patterns to keep you engaged longer. In substance industries, the same principle appears as availability, potency, rapid delivery, and ritual. Addiction is easier when the reward is fast, strong, and everywhere. At a certain point, addiction stops being something you do. It becomes something you are, or at least something you think you are. Identity-based learning is powerful. If a person internalizes, "I'm the type of person who can't stop," that belief changes behavior. And shame-based identity creates a dangerous logic. If I'm already broken, why bother protecting myself? Recovery often begins, not with white-knuckled resistance, but with identity repair. I'm not a bad person trying to become good. I'm a hurting person trying to become well. That shift can sound soft. It isn't. Withdrawal is often portrayed as physical sickness, and it can be. But psychologically, withdrawal is also a perception shift. Anxiety spikes, irritability rises, sleep breaks, the body aches, the world feels gray, time slows down, minor stress feels like catastrophe. And in that state, the brain proposes a solution. The thing that caused this will fix this. This is part of why addiction can look irrational. It's like a house fire where the only extinguisher is gasoline. In severe substance withdrawals, like alcohol or benzodiazepines, stopping can even be medically dangerous. That's one reason why professional help matters. But even in less medically dangerous withdrawals, the psychological pressure can be extreme because the brain is screaming for homeostasis, any homeostasis, even if it's false. Addiction teaches the brain a shortcut, and the brain hates giving up shortcuts. It changes what the brain predicts is possible. One of the most misunderstood parts of addiction is relapse. People think relapse means the person didn't learn, or didn't mean it, or didn't want recovery. But learning research tells us something sobering. When you extinguish a learned behavior, you don't erase the original learning. You build new learning on top of it. That means old pathways can return under stress, in old environments, or when cues reappear. There's spontaneous recovery, cravings returning after time passes. There's renewal, cravings returning in a location linked to use. There's reinstatement, a small exposure reactivating the whole pattern. This is why someone can be stable for months, then suddenly feel cravings like the first week. Their brain didn't forget recovery. Their brain remembered the older program when conditions matched. Understanding this doesn't excuse harm, but it changes the strategy. You don't beat addiction by pretending the old learning is gone. You beat it by building a life and a nervous system where the old learning has less power. Cravings feel like orders, but they're more like weather, intense, real, and temporary. One of the most practical psychological tools is learning that urges rise, peak, and fall, even if you do nothing. This is sometimes called urge surfing. You observe the craving as a set of sensations: tightness, restlessness, heat, a thought loop. You don't debate it. You don't obey it. You ride it. That sounds simple. It isn't easy, but it's powerful because it retrains the brain. Not every craving is followed by reinforcement, and when cravings stop being automatically rewarded, they slowly lose some of their authority. This is one of the least cinematic truths about recovery. Sometimes the win is just waiting 10 minutes. You've probably heard the idea that people only recover when they hit rock bottom. But rock bottom is not a requirement. It's often a grave. The bottom concept can create an excuse to delay help. They're not bad enough yet. They need to learn. They have to want it. But addiction is a learning disorder that gets worse with practice. Waiting for more consequences is like treating a fire by letting it burn until it gets tired. Earlier intervention is easier, not harder. Less entrenched learning is easier to rewrite. Recovery isn't one thing. It's a bundle of changes: biological, psychological, and social. Here are approaches with strong evidence, depending on the addiction and the person. For opioid addiction, methadone or buprenorphine reduce overdose risk and stabilize the brain. For alcohol, naltrexone or acamprosate can help. For nicotine, replacement therapies and medications improve success. Medication isn't cheating. It's treating a brain-based condition with brain-based tools. Therapy that targets learning and coping, CBT, motivational interviewing, contingency management, trauma-informed, family-based. Community and accountability matter. Harm reduction keeps people alive, raising the odds they recover. The disturbing psychology of addiction is that it's self-reinforcing. The hopeful psychology is that recovery is also self-reinforcing. Once it starts, small wins compound. Sleep improves. Decision-making improves. Shame reduces. Relationships stabilize. The future becomes real again. One of the most damaging misunderstandings is confusing the person with the addiction. Addiction isn't personality or character. It's a pattern that hijacks learning, stress, and pain systems. Attack the person, you strengthen shame. Attack the pattern, you strengthen agency. Here's the disturbing truth. Addiction can make you betray yourself. It can make you lie while hating lies. It can make you steal while loving your family. If you take only one thing from this video, let it be this. Addiction is not a lack of love, not a lack of intelligence, not a lack of character. It's often a nervous system that learned to run from pain using the fastest exit available. And recovery, real recovery, is not just stopping. It's building a life where you don't need to disappear. If you're struggling, consider talking to a professional, a trusted person, or a local support service. If someone you love is struggling, remember, contempt rarely cures anything. Boundaries matter, but so does compassion. If you want more deep dives like this, on the psychology of compulsion, trauma, habit loops, and how the brain rewires, subscribe. And in the next video, we'll explore how modern technology exploits the same reinforcement systems that substances do, and what you can do to fight back.